Good day and welcome to another episode of What's Happening Today, presented to you by Rapido News Network. In our first story today, we will discuss about a shocking incident in which former Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. Shinzo Abe, got hospitalized after being shot. Next, we will talk about UK's Prime Minister, Mr. Boris Johnson's tenure, which ended with a messy exit. Post that, we will discuss the Senate Democrats proposing raising taxes on some high earners to bolster Medicare. And in our final story, we will talk about the Russian Ukrainian conflict. So let's get started. In our first story, former Japanese Prime Minister Mr. Shinzo Abe collapsed and was left unconscious after he was apparently shot on Friday while giving a speech in Western Japan. Mr. Abe appeared to be bleeding after a gunshot was heard in the city of Nara near Kyoto, according to a report from NHK, which is the public broadcaster for Japan. Reports said that Mr. Abe had been shot either in the chest or in the neck. The police arrested a suspect, Tetsuya Yamagami. The man was a Nara resident. Images shared on social media showed a man being tackled after the shooting near Yamatosai Daiji station. The chief cabinet secretary said that the police had retrieved a gun. Seijo Yashuara, an official in the command center at the Nara fire department, said that Mr. Abe was under cardiopulmonary arrest. After that, he had been taken by an ambulance to a medical evacuation helicopter. He was then transported to Nara Medical University Hospital. The Nara Fire Department said, Mr. Abe was unconscious and is showing no vital signs, Mr. Yashuara further told. Mr. Abe was the country's longest serving prime minister and served two terms. First one from 2006 to 2007 and second from 2012 to 2020. He resigned in 2020 because of ill health. The former prime minister was in Nara campaigning ahead of elections for the upper house of parliament scheduled for Sunday. Mr. Abe was giving a campaign speech on behalf of Ki Sato, a current member of the upper house running for re-election in Nara, when he was shot. Fumio Kishida, the current prime minister, was on the campaign trail in Yamagata and was to return to Tokyo, where he was expected to speak to the news media. Hirokazu Matsuno, chief cabinet secretary to Prime Minister Kishida, said that a crisis management center has been set up in the prime minister's office in response to the shooting. Now, in our next story, it finally came, and it was just as chaotic, messy, and jaw-dropping as every other chapter of Mr. Boris Johnson's political career. Holed up in Downing Street on Wednesday night, the Prime Minister faced an open rebellion of his cabinet, a catastrophic loss of support in his Conservative Party, and a wholesale exodus of ministers, which threatened to leave significant part of the British government without functioning leadership. By Thursday morning, however, political gravity had finally reasserted itself. For one of the few times in his career, Mr. Johnson was unable to bend the narrative to his advantage through the sheer force of his personality. At midday, the Prime Minister went to a lectern in front of 10 Downing Street to announce that he was relinquishing the leadership of the party that no longer supported him and giving up a job that he had pursued for much of his adult life. I want to tell you how sorry I am to be giving up the best job in the world, Mr. Johnson said during his final remarks as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Now, in our next story, Senate Democrats will push to raise taxes on some high-earning Americans and steer the money to improving the solvency of Medicare, according to the officials briefed on the plan. As they cobble together a modest version of President Biden's stalled tax and spending package, the proposal is projected to raise over $203 billion in the next decade by imposing an additional 3.8% tax on income earned from owning a piece of what is known as pass-through business such as law firm or medical practice. The money that would be generated by this change is estimated to be enough to extend the solvency of the Medicare Trust Fund that pays for hospital care, currently set to begin running out of money in 2028 up until 2031. It is the most recent agreement to emerge from private negotiations between Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, who is also the Senate Majority Leader, and Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, a conservative-leaning Democrat, who had demanded that his party rein in its sweeping ambition for a domestic policy plan. In December, Mr. Manchin torpedoed effort to pass Mr. Biden's $2.2 trillion social safety net, climate and tax package because of concerns over its cost and impact on the economy at the time of rising inflation. His backing is critical because with Republicans expected to be uniformly opposed, the only way Democrats can pass this package through the evenly divided Senate is to win an unanimous backing from their caucus, and to do so under special budget rules that would shield it from filibuster and to allow it to pass on a simple majority vote. Now in our next story, stark differences in state-by-state approaches to abortion law were on display in South Carolina on Thursday when National Advocacy Group and hundreds of demonstrators descended on the State House grounds to testify before lawmakers who are considering new abortion-related measures in the wake of the US Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. Trigger bans immediately went into effect in 13 states after the ruling 2 weeks ago, and Democratic leaders in other areas have sought to demarcate their state as safe harbors for abortion providers and seekers. South Carolina's Republican leaders have signaled their intent to go even further than the law banning abortion around 6 weeks of pregnancy that took effect on June 27th. After the Supreme Court ruling, Republican Governor Henry McMaster said that he would work with the General Assembly, where the GOP holds a supermajority in both chambers, to determine the best solution for protecting the lives of unborn South Carolinians. That process began on Thursday with the first meeting of an ad hoc committee considering a bill to prohibit abortions. More than 150 people demonstrated outside the meeting, with dozens lining up at sunrise to secure a spot to testify. Now in our final story on the Russian Ukrainian conflict, Russia's military action in Ukraine is now in its 5th month. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday warned Kyiv that it should quickly accept Moscow's term or brace for the worst, adding that Russia has barely started its action. Speaking at a meeting with the leaders of the Kremlin-controlled parliament, Putin accused Western allies of fueling the hostilities, charging that the West wants to fight us until the last Ukrainian. It's a tragedy for the Ukrainian people, but it looked like that they are heading in that direction, he added. Everybody should know that largely speaking, we haven't even yet started anything in the earnest, Putin said in a menacing note. He declared that Russia remains ready to sit down for talks to end the fighting, adding that those who refuse to do so should know that the longer it lasts, the more difficult it will be for them to make a deal with us. We are hearing that they want to defeat us on the battlefield, Putin said. Let them try. Earlier in the conflict, the Kremlin demanded that Kyiv acknowledge Russian sovereignty over the Crimean Peninsula, which it annexed in 2014, and recognize the independence of Moscow-backed separatist region in eastern Ukraine. Moscow also said it expected Ukraine to bow to the existing situation on the ground, a reference to other land gains it has made since Russian troops rolled into Ukraine on February 24th. After failing to capture Kyiv and other big cities in Ukraine's northeast early in the campaign, the Russian military shifted its focus to the eastern industrial heartland of Donbass, where Moscow-backed separatists have fought Ukrainian troops since 2014. Earlier this week, the Russian military claimed control of the Luhansk province, one of the two that make up Donbass, and is preparing to press its offensive into the second one, Donetsk. In the early stages of the conflict, Russia won control of the southeast Kherson region and part of neighboring Zaporizhzhia. Moscow is expected eventually to try to cut Ukraine off from its Black Sea coast all the way to the Romanian border. If successful, it would deal a crushing blow to the Ukrainian economy and also create corridor to Moldova's separatist region of Transnistria, where Russia maintains a military base. Putin reaffirmed his long-held claim that the West is using the conflict in Ukraine to try to isolate and weaken Russia. This conflict has now even turned towards space. 3 days after Russian cosmonauts displayed anti-Ukraine flag on the International Space Station, NASA issued a statement blasting this activity. NASA strongly rebukes Russia using the International Space Station for political purposes to support its war against Ukraine, which is fundamentally inconsistent with the station's primary function among the 15 international participating countries to advance science and develop technology for peaceful purposes. It is not immediately clear whether this will affect ongoing negotiations for a seat swap in September, when a Russian cosmonaut is due to fly on a NASA mission to a space station and a NASA astronaut is due to fly on a Russian vehicle. The Russian State Space Corporation, responsible for space flight activities, Roscosmos, on Monday posted image to its official Telegram Telegram channel showing 3 cosmonauts with the tricolor flag of Luhansk People's Republic and the Donetsk People's Republic. This is a long-awaited day that residents of the occupied areas of Luhansk region have been waiting for 8 years, the Roscosmos message stated. We are confident that the July 3rd, 2022 will forever go down in the history of the Republic. The images and social media posting represents the most blatant use of International Space Station, which is operated by the United States, Russia, Japan, Canada, and the European Space Agency for Russian causes since the beginning of this conflict. Now that was all for the major news update for July 8th. Stay tuned for our next update on the ongoing world affairs. We hope that you find this video useful. If you like this video, hit like. And for a continued update on what's happening around the world, consider subscribing. And hit that bell icon if you never want to miss an update whenever we post something new. If you have any comments or any suggestions, please let us know in the comment sections below. Thank you.